Okay, so we're talking about crying in like all capacities. Let's touch on it when pertaining to sleep training, and let's touch on it pertaining to just like everyday life, because I think it's all relative. And I just said before that no mom wants to hear their kid cry, whether it's at the park, in the car, or at bedtime. Okay, let's just put that out there. Nobody likes it, and it's really one of the hardest parts of being a mom, I think, is hearing our kids in unrest or in a tantrum, the whiny phases, and we don't really have the solution, and or the solution isn't the solution. Does that make sense? That Band-Aid fix is not our long-term solution, and sometimes sitting through the crying or the tantrum or the protesting behavior is so painful, but we know that there's a product at the other end, whether it's a more jovial, joyous toddler who doesn't get her panties in a bunch, or it's a child that can sleep through the night, right?
Totally.
Lots of fruitful products on the other side of crying sometimes. And I always like to think about it like, I'm like a crier at baseline, just gonna say, like I cried a lot as a kid. I cried a lot as a teenager. If a boyfriend hurt my feelings, I was crying. I cried to my mom a lot. If I get uncomfortable, I cry. And for me, it's just like cathartic. Like I feel tired and drained, but I also feel better after a good cry sometimes. Do you feel that way?
Sure. No, I get what you mean. I'm not really a crier. I hate if I'm going to cry, but obviously it happens, right? Because I feel like if I start crying, it's really hard for me to stop. And maybe one of my kids is like that too. I'm just thinking about this now. Maybe it's all my fault. No, I'm joking. So like I hate the feeling inside, but I get if I'm going to cry. But yeah, I feel like crying when it comes to babies, kids, teenagers, adults, right? Like nobody wants to do it. No one's like, I want to go cry right now, or I want to just put earphones in and listen to crying. Like nobody wants to do that. I don't know anybody that wants to do that.
No. And I think like as the mom, we're just wired. Obviously, we, carried the child, we birthed them. We are their primary caregiver the majority of the time. So whether we're baby, toddlers, or big kids, like I told you yesterday or the day before, my husband is literally sitting there, and I go to use the restroom. It's like 30 seconds, 45 seconds I've been gone, and I'm already hearing my name.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, why? Like, your dad is literally sitting right there, and I just want to go to the bathroom in peace. So I'm not past that point yet where I can go to the bathroom yet, I guess. But it just feels like frustrating. And it's natural, I guess, to feel frustrated with that. But our kids just need us. I mean, you and I are grown adults. We still need our mothers daily, weekly. So, like, what do we expect, right? Like, if I have a problem, mom is my savior. She is my comfort. And, like, whether she has the solution or not, I can come to her with those hard feelings. So, segueing into kind of what we really wanted to talk to you guys about today is how much crying is involved in sleep training. And this is a really common question. I would say we get on those discovery calls or on social media, and Stellina, you wrote that article about this to really just put some perspective on it. And it's been really helpful. So let's chat through that a little bit. But
yeah, let's do it.
What would you say, like, is your go-to answer when a mom is saying, I'm so tired, I want my child to sleep through the night, I'm just really nervous about the crying?
Yes, and I can totally empathize with parents when they say that, or, they ask that question, because I was totally the same, and I still am, right? I want to minimize crying when I'm working with clients as much as humanly possible, right? So what I usually say is, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There probably will be crying, right? Because there's no sleep training method that's going to be tear-free, okay? I do think some of it can be personality, right? Some kids just cry more than others. I have 3 kids. One of my kids cries way more than the other 2. Just, she came out like that, okay? Like, it just is what it is, and I think that's important to know too. But I always just want to highlight that when we work with clients, we're always trying to minimize the crying, set them up for the best success possible as far as the daytime schedule goes, as far as the routines go, bedtime routine, feedings, and the nighttime method. Of course, the nighttime method is extremely important, like for sleep training here, but I think a lot of the time what people don't know or don't understand in the beginning is that it's really like the whole picture. So when we can get the whole picture down, and it takes some time and it takes some consistency, we should definitely be having less crying, maybe just a little bit of crying, or maybe no crying whatsoever. Like that is the goal for the babies to go down, you know, with a little to no crying at the end of the sleep training process, right? So this is where our intake form is like really helpful too, right? Because one of the questions that we ask is like, what is your tolerance for crying? Maybe like 10 minutes of crying, let's say, for example. And that helps us, it helps me anyway, know, you know, okay, what am I working with here? Because sometimes it'll just take one night of maybe a kid, you know, of some elevated crying and they kind of get it out of their system and then they learn how to self-soothe and then it's like smooth sailing from there. Some people, we have to move a little bit slower, maybe do a few more check-ins, maybe do a little bit more crib side soothing, and I think that's totally okay. But I guess to go back to the question, us at Tweet Dreams, we are always trying to, you know, look behind the closed doors and see like, how can we help this child cry less? Because that's what we want. You know, you always say that quote. What's that quote you always say? Like, we're in the sleep business, not the crying business. And I love that because we may need to get over that like hump of like, okay, they're going to cry a little bit because like kids cry and like it totally sucks. But for me, and I talk about this with clients a lot too, my threshold for crying is kind of high now because I have 3 kids. I've been through it much higher than it was like when I first had the babies, right? When I first had my twins, I think they like went like, meh. And I was like, oh my God, they need something. Like, let me see. Versus like, is something wrong, right? Like I'm, you know, severely type A. I'm like, you know, all about safety, all about like making sure my kids are good. And as long as they are, and I know that whatever crying, whether that was sleep training crying, whether that's crying because they didn't get the right bowl, whether that's crying out of frustration, whether that's crying because they fell and like skinned their knee, like they're not, you know, really hurt. They're just kind of like sad. If I know they're okay, I can deal with the crying a whole lot more, right? Versus, I hate to bring this up again, but my son almost broke his nose a couple weeks ago. And like, I was so nervous about the kind of crying he was doing. 1, because I couldn't get it to stop. 2, because I was concerned he like broke his nose. Like he had like I thought he had like a severe break and he was crying from like actual pain that I could not stop. Like with everything I was doing, you know, taking him outside, giving him a new toy, like putting on a TV show, like trying all the tricks and I couldn't get it to stop. So obviously that is so much different in my opinion than like, we've done a whole bedtime routine. We've changed the diaper. We know they're not sick. And, you know, they're protesting some sort of change, right?
Hey, girl, are you tired? Not only tired from lack of sleep, but tired of looking all over the internet for sleep advice that's specific to your twins? Here at Tweet Dreams, we know that twin-specific advice and routines should be easy to find and access. And that's why we are a one-stop shop for you as a sleep resource. Our blog is chock full of advice for twins when it comes to naps, neck reading, sleeping through the night, and so much more. Not sure where to start? Be sure to grab our free twin sleep guide available for download today. This guide will walk you through an optimal bedtime routine, how to keep them sleep throughout the day, and how to keep the routine going. As twin moms, we know how special those breaks are, and we want you to have them. So we have the show notes to grab your copy. Think about it. 5 minutes ago, baby was clean, dry, healthy, fed. Now 5 minutes later, we're implementing a change. And baby's protesting that, okay? We know that it's just the protest of the habit change and not some other deep, dark secret that we can't pinpoint, okay? So to me, that is helpful to say we can control so many things. Like you just said, we can control the routine, the environment, the feedings, all of that, we don't have any control of when our kids are crying, whether that's, a random birthday in the car or a doctor's appointment that goes to hell. We just don't have control over that stuff. And so I think part of the issue here is when we are triggered by our kids crying, it's because we don't really have the solution in that moment, and it feels like we're out of control. 100%. No, so that's really helpful. So when we think about how much crying, it's really hard to say. Like you said, there's so many factors, whether it's what props and associations you're breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe it's a whole laundry list of them, right? Or maybe it's just like one little quick change. But even then, we could get, a child that's just personality-wise super, resistant to change and things like that, or just super vocal, just likes to cry at baseline, okay? So like maybe that small change is just enough to kind of push them over the edge. So it's really hard to predict, and that's kind of what we tell clients for sure. Super hard to predict, but it's our job as sleep consultants. So if you hire a sleep consultant, when it's their job to really reduce this crying. It is not normal to have a baby protesting bedtime night after night. It's not normal, okay? We're in this business of helping parents achieve that sleep and babies to achieve that sleep, which is a product of some of those, crying scenarios that we have to go through. But at the end of the day, you and I are like those detectives in the background. We're checking the log. We're looking at the data. We're inquiring with the parents. Okay, can you confirm this, that, and the other thing? Because what I'm seeing is not typical, so we definitely want to investigate. Like, that's 100% our job. We want that. Like, we want the sleep to be happening with very little protest as the child is just understanding and accepting the change of habits, right? That's really, really important to us, right? So those are some of the things that we can share here when it comes to crying and sleep training. When you read online or like you hear from your pediatrician, like, oh, just let them cry it out. I hate that. And not that I'm super against like an extinction method, which is what cry it out is, but having a baby cry is not what sleep training is. I mean, it's in our perspective and our definition of teaching that independent sleep by laying the foundation of all those things that you described, Stellina. It's not just like put the drowsy baby into the crib and then let them figure it out, or, put them into the bed after the breast and then in the middle of the night, it's up to them to figure it out. Like, no, we definitely want to set the child up for success as much as possible to reduce the amount. We talked a little bit last week about body position and really how when we're sleep training, sometimes the body position is sort of standing in the way of the child starting to self-soothe, and a lot of those are just those learning curves. So sometimes when we're working like with the older ages, that can be a roadblock. But also sometimes when we're working with like the 4-monthers, we really maybe have a baby that's just like colicky, quote unquote, and hasn't tapped into the calming reflex yet. Like they're just kind of unmanageable during the daytime. They're not getting their hands in their mouth. They go from 0 to 100 and they don't have a lot of capability or skill yet to come back down. And not gonna lie, I've seen that before. Super atypical, but sometimes those younger babies maybe cry a little bit more. Like, what's your take on that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the 4-monthers, it's hit or miss with the crying. Sometimes I'm really surprised and I'll be like, wow, great. Like this baby really just needed like the routine and feedings at the right time. And this baby's doing like great right from the beginning. Other times, there is some elevated crying from the beginning that, can take some time to mitigate, and that's completely normal during a process of change. What I will say though is that I can almost guarantee, I mean, obviously nothing in life is a guarantee, but I can almost guarantee that with consistency, following the process and being as open and honest with your sleep consultant, the first few nights should be the most difficult and the most challenging. But then once you can kind of, get through those first few nights, you should see some change, some positive change, right? We should be going the right direction. So I feel like that statement really helps parents a lot. Like, okay, if I do this should happen, right? We should be getting more sleep. They should be crying less. If they're not, we need to figure out why. We work off of averages all the time, week windows, whatever, but no two babies are the same. So we just need to probably tweak some stuff. We always get on the phone halfway through, talk about feedings, schedules, whatnot, what's standing in the way. Sometimes we get on the phone and the mom is like, oh, well, he did fall asleep in the car for 5 minutes, or 10 minutes that day. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't seem like it's going to make a big difference, but to us, we need to move this nap, way further away now, or we need to talk about how you need to keep him awake in the car, or we need to talk about not taking a car ride at the time. There's so much, right? So many little things.
Because you don't want to put that mom through a refused nap time.
Exactly.
That's torture that can totally be unavoided, or can totally be avoided.
Yeah.
So, no, I love that example. We are like your secret detective sleep bestie.
Yeah,
we're here to set you up for. It's everything's
in my magnifying glass, and I'm like, where is it? What is bothering this child? Why won't he or she sleep for the parents, right? And for himself. So yeah, no.
I think it goes without saying that both of us are certified sleep consultants. We've been doing this for many years, and we do what we do because we're confident that the things that we teach are backed in science and research, and that there's no long-term or even short-term negative effects to some controlled crying when we're learning a new skill. Okay. With that said, though, it's still hard. It's hard AF for sure. In any possible scenario, I struggle with patience when my kids are crying. I struggle with my own anxiety when my kids are crying. I spiral into all these different things. So we are here for you. We understand how hard it is. And if you want to sleep train and you're just really, really concerned about that, get us on a discovery call so we can kind of, talk through what the options are and what our process looks like to make it as easy as possible, because you will benefit from those restorative nights of sleep, for years to come. And that's why we love what we do, right?
Totally.
So, yeah, I think this is a good informational episode, and it's a super common question, and it goes hand in hand with sleep training. We want to know about the crying, and yeah, really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing, Stellina, today. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week. Take care.
If you liked this episode and conversation, be sure to leave a review or rating. Share it with a friend on social media or a family member. It's our goal to reach as many parents of multiples and singletons alike. You're not alone in your parenting journey. If you'd like to hear about a specific topic or have an episode idea, please feel free to message us. We're here to help.